I think today Donald Trump is going to sign an executive order banning black people.
I like to consider myself an advocate for free speech, which essentially means that I believe in your right to express your dumb ideas as much as I believe in my right to express my dumb ideas, right? I believe there should be no, at least consequences as far as the law when it comes to you expressing yourself. However, may come with consequences, right? You and I may be liable to have our ass kicked or vice versa for saying some wild and out-of-pocket things, but nevertheless, I do believe that we should have the right to at least express those things. However, there are times when I question whether or not I actually stand for the First A, the First Amendment, 1A. There are times when I think to myself, you know what? I'm okay parting ways with it a little bit, because when I hear this sort of demonic, vile spewage, when I hear this sort of insanity displayed in a public setting in this sort of way, these sort of lies, these sorts of creations of discord and divide and conquer, this sort of animosity that is being conjured by the witches of the wicked East, West, North, and the South, I'll think to myself that to hell with this show. This needs to get canceled. I'm for cancel culture when it comes to The View. I said it. When it comes to the show known as The View, though it may be deeply entertaining in some respect, there are real human beings who listen to these things and they take them as fact. Now, that may be the fault of the individual who is tuning into this foolishness and taking it as fact. But we have seen the byproduct of individuals tuning into the likes of The View. How do I know? Because, after November 5th, I was told that DJT, aka Donald Django Trump, would indeed be sending me to some sort of plantation. I would be picking cotton, right? That's what I was told. Many of the individuals who follow me online were told that they would be sent back to Mexico, even though they were born in the United States, right? Those sorts of things were taking place. This is the same audience who is tuning into these sorts of messages. So when I hear something like this, from actually, she's like the least popular cast member, which is saying a lot on this entire panel. Ana Navarro, or at least the least known. Let me say that. The least popular, I would say, is Not So Sunny Hostile. I would say that. The loudest and most obnoxious is likely Whoopen Goldberg. And just the most vile one is probably Joyless Reed, or Joyless Behar, excuse me. There's two Joylesses on MSDNC's platform. There is the Joyless of the Reed and the Joyless of the Behar. So here we have Ana Navarro essentially expressing her beliefs as far as what Donald Trump was going to do to black people during the Super Bowl halftime show. So let's go ahead and check this out. What's she talking about?
Yes. What about you, Anna?
Okay, well, I don't do sports. I don't do football, so I wasn't watching the game. But listen, I think today Donald Trump is going to sign an executive order banning black people from halftime. Because you remember last week we were talking about...
That's it. That's the story. That's the segment. Here's the thing. This conversation about racism is it's a multi-layered situation, right? It is a complex situation, a complex subject. But there are also just straightforward, straight up aspects of it, such as if you want to create greater racial animosity, continue to say things like that. If you want to create a narrative in people's heads to where racism is just at every corner, at every turn, that there is an administration who is currently in office that is there to basically lock you up in cages, put you back on plantations, etc., continue to say things like that. That's a straightforward aspect of racism, right? The people who have done the worst when it comes to race relations in the last 50 to 60 years have been the race hustlers, the so-called white liberals, right? So-called far-left woke progressives. Those individuals have done more to essentially take us backwards, to take us back maybe 100 years, to cancel out and eradicate the progress that was made by those who came before us, the likes of the MLKs and, those who essentially marched with MLK, those who walked with him, those who communed with him, those who were part of that entire strategic alliance or essentially movement that then led to the Civil Rights Act being signed into law. This type of stuff takes us back 100 years before that. It takes us back into the Democratic Plantations, Jim Crow laws. That's what it takes us back to. When you are sending messages like this, what you are saying to people is that you should be deeply afraid of things that actually don't exist, and that puts people on edge. And so they start to live as if that is the reality. Then they start to act off of that. And what you get as a byproduct is greater hostility. When you have greater hostility that is racially focused, it then creates greater hostility within the entire ecosystem. For example, if you have somebody who is, laying hands on somebody or, being harassing somebody, being aggressive towards somebody on the basis of race, and let's say they believe that somebody's being racist towards them because they've been told that, right? All white people are racist. And so let's say it's a black individual. They start to pop off on the white person, and all of a sudden you now have a conflict taking place. The conflict was on the basis of an illusion, in essence. I'm not saying racism doesn't exist. I'm just saying that there are more cases than not when somebody is seeing racism where it does not exist, right? I've been in situations where I was just reading racism where it wasn't there. Quote unquote microaggressions. Oh, look at how they're looking at me, or look how they're not looking at me, and everything in between. Right? Anything can be deemed as racism if you're looking for it. So imagine a person is now creating a conflict on the basis of that. And so now you have a back and forth. Now it creates genuine animosity. So imagine that happen at a scale level. Imagine that happen at a social or at a societal level. If that happens at scale, you then create a greater division. These people are being attacked by these people, so these people are now defensive against these people. That's the divide and conquer. That's why when I say these things, I'm not saying it hyperbolically. I'm not saying it trying to exaggerate. I mean exactly what I say. This is taking us back 100 years. It's creating greater animosity towards people who are already building bridges. We were getting over this thing. The reason why, unfortunately, I have a channel that is actually picking up traction, speaking on these subjects, is because these things resonate. Unfortunately, these things are resonating. Unfortunately, I have something to always talk about when it comes to race relations, because we got to a place where we were finally, maybe not fully kumbaya'd, but we were at a place where we at least were amicable. We were building relationships. There were those on the fringes who were racist, and, neither black or white really wanted to engage with them. But then it became socially acceptable to become bigoted towards a specific group of people, and we all know who that is. And that has created now greater animosity and is pushing people to the fringes. When you allow for any group of individuals to get away with that sort of vitriol energy or vitriolic energy, like the individuals who sit on the panel of The View, it's incredible how, the show is called The View, but they lack vision. That's a bar. The show is called The View, but they lack vision. They lack foresight or insight. They have no view. They have no perspective. All they have is hatred that they continue to spew. So when I say I want them canceled, I genuinely mean it, because it's a propaganda platform. Not to say that all of MSDNC and the CNNs and CBSs, we all know those are, propaganda machines. And I'm not going to say that Fox doesn't have its own bias. Of course it does. It is a partisan platform. But they won't lie to you and say, oh, we're, this or that. No, we support this guy. We stand behind this movement. We, stand behind this party, etc. MSDNC tries to finesse you into believing that they're anything besides a pawn, a tool of the DNC. Simple as that, right? The Democratic National Convention. They try to convince you that they're anything but that. And that's what you have as a byproduct of such entities. They look to create chaos, especially because they're on the losing side. That's why they're going off, right? They're fighting against Doge. They're fighting against Americans having their money saved. They're fighting against government corruption, the thing that they said that they cared so deeply about. Fight the power, fight the system, fight. Y'all were the same ones yelling, crying, and screaming about that, but yet you're also the ones protesting against a department that has literally been created to make sure that Americans' tax dollars are going in the right place as opposed to corruption, right? Or even just waste, right? There's both. Let's start with the corruption, and then we just get to the simple waste. Where can we trim some fat or whatever it may be? How do we make for smaller government? Which the Democratic platform used to kind of pretend that they actually wanted smaller government. Turns out that they're not the party of smaller government. Turns out that essentially they want people running around terrified, believing that, bigger government is going to be the saving grace. There's this huge conversation about, DEI is over. That means there's an attack on, people of color. These are the ones who are being mostly impacted. These sort of government jobs are being eradicated. Why did nobody have anything to say when Bill Clinton was getting rid of hundreds of thousands of government jobs in order to be more efficient? It's interesting that wasn't the large conversation piece that is even now coming up. 10,000 jobs are gone in USAID, right? An organization that has been given $40 billion a year, and most of that money has been wasted or has gone to corrupt causes. And I mean corrupt in the literal clinical definition. You have conflicting interest. You have political getting a few $1 million, which is a news platform. They're supposed to be a non-biased, a bipartisan platform that is being funded by the Democratic platform. We have the BBC that is being funded by the Democratic platform. Again, this is the very same party. I know that these aren't politicians because it's deeper than politics. It's about ideology. That's what it is. It's a war of ideology. What are we going to stand on? Are we going to stand on these neo-Marxist, communist sort of ideologies, or free market, freedom, libertarian, I guess you could say, sort of ideology? More conservative leaning, at least fiscally conservative. We can't force anybody to be conservative in their morality, but we would hope so, right? There's a reason why tradition works. There's a reason why we've been sustaining our cultures in a certain way. And when you start to move in another direction, then you start to have more chaos and then discord. There's a reason for those things, right? We're simply looking to create an environment that is at least best serving for as many as possible, as opposed to trying to cater towards the fringes. That's why the far right thing won't work. It doesn't work. The far left thing does not work. It should not work, right? We don't want either of those. So these type of lies and this type of discord, it's deeper than just a moment of a little thing being said. And honestly, this is a straw that broke the camel's back for me. Like, I've heard so much from these people, so many lies, from women are going to have all their rights taken away. Yeah, all their rights. They, going to be subject to a stove and a washing machine, right? Women won't be able to work. They have to have a man to sign off on property ownership. You can't actually pay your mortgage anymore because you're a woman. I bet there's women right now who were praying that was the case. What? I don't have to pay for what? Oh, guess what? The month just hit, mortgage is due. You understand me? Job? Hello? Yeah, you still work here, right? Okay, get your ass to work. That's still a reality. But these individuals are created a different level. And it's a war of ideas. It's a war of perception. And all they're looking for is to get us into a mentality where we are essentially afraid. That is it's fear-mongering. It's the entire platform. It's fear-mongering. Some people, very few people are like, oh, well, all this dude does is complain or whatever it is. And I say, actually, this perspective, I believe, at least in my own view, and I'm biased to my own view, but I believe that this is the most productive conversation we could be having. I'm not the type of dude to say, look at this conspiracy, it's so terrible, and then just leave it there, right? I say that there is solutions, and it is to start to think for ourselves, to be autonomous in our thinking, or, to be independent in our thinking, to allow ourselves to step outside of a narrative, whether it's left, right, or anywhere in between. We always have to be questioning things. I got to the place that I did by questioning everything. When I realized that, I'm being lied to, I'm being deceived, these things are true, these things are not, and being willing to see reality for what it is, as opposed to being so fixated in my own ideology, my own dogma, which is so easy to do, right? Me and my girl have been watching, what's it called? Like How to Be a Cult Leader. It's not what you think. What is what you think, but it's not what you think, right? It's essentially breaking down, how these cults are formed, and the mentality and the psychology of the leaders and the things that they do, the tools they implement in order to create these cults. But, something that I always take away from this type of narrative or these types of stories is it is easy to get caught up in a dogma and an ideology, even if you are a otherwise smart individual. You can be as sophisticated as you want to be. If you are not mentally ready for this onslaught, this psychological warfare, it's a war for our mind. It's a war for ideas, or at least to implement or implant ideas into our minds for us to then implement certain ways of being. They influence us psychologically to have us then move on that psychology physically. So they call for a call to arms or whatever it may be. And they don't have to necessarily they don't have to put the weapon in your hands. They just fix your mentality to a certain place, and then you end up doing it yourself. So we have to really be cautious of our mentalities. We have to remember that 1930s Germany, the little mustache man's regime, those are once just regular, normal citizens, everyday people that fell into fascism because, they left themselves vulnerable, open, and susceptible to such ideas. And mind you, fascism was a far left movement. Before Wikipedia changed into their, they did their spin, I guess. And I actually caught Wikipedia. This is a little side tangent, but I caught Wikipedia because the day after Trump was in office, there was stuff that was on Trump's page before that all of a sudden wasn't there, and then other things that weren't there that were. And I even just typed fascist, and the first thing that pops up is a video of Trump on Google. No, this was before, he won. This was before he won. Just before the election, there were things that were changing, and I was watching them in real time. I was like, oh, that's interesting. All of a sudden, fascism is a far-right movement, and it's, interesting. Interesting how revisionist history works in real time. We always have to be aware, be cautious, read into true history, those who have done the actual work to go deep and, didn't have the agenda connected of having clicks, views, or whatever it may be that is their driving factor, their modus operandi, as they say, right? That's why, again, I get into the old school books. And I want to dive deep into these books. I want to get into the actual insights. What did they research? And then juxtapose it to other information and see what actually checks out. And, of course, we can only know so much, but we also have to trust our own instinct, our own gut knowing, in essence, as opposed to just information we're being fed. So, that's my 2.5 cents on that one. But, yeah, cancel the view. I'm with it. I'm for it. I can put 1A aside for that one.
I used to be afraid of the dark, a place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 3-6-5, that's a full rotation. I see you looking up, you know them constellations. Constantly gazing like house of praises, you get to praising.